Are stories becoming worse because we just use AI these days? And have we maybe already seen the last great writer?
Oh, no way. No, I think I know what you're saying. And AI stories by themselves are, to quote my 13-year-old son, they are mid at best. So like they're painfully average.
So, would you rather watch an AI robot make a perfect basketball shot 300 times or go to an event where humans are still playing the game? Well, Mike Todasco, who has been a senior director at PayPal for more than 6 years, believes that storytelling and human connection will become increasingly important as we see AI take over more and more tasks. Why that is and how AI is impacting creativity is what we will be talking about in this episode. Let's go. Well, Mike, you've been 10 years at PayPal, 6 years of that as a senior director of innovation. You're engaged in a lot of stuff these days. So maybe, in just 60 seconds, can you give us a short elevator pitch of your journey so far? What's driven you and what is fueling you these days?
Awesome. Yeah, no, thanks, Chris. My background's a little bit weird. I'm an innovation guy now, I guess, but I started as an accountant. Which is, a very weird path to have gone through. So I started in accounting. I moved to kind of corporate strategy type roles. And after doing that for a few years, started my own business. In many ways, failed miserably at it, but it was the best experience of my life. And then soon after that, had an opportunity to join PayPal, which I was at for 11 years, as you said. First half was in product roles, so just building cool stuff used by hundreds of millions of people. And the back half was running the innovation group for the company, which was an amazing experience about how to build a culture of innovation. I left PayPal 2022 to really focus on AI. Currently, I'm at San Diego State University as a visiting fellow there in the AI Center. And I do teaching, writing, research, all things in the world of AI because it is the most exciting technology I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Just recently I scrolled through the apps on my, my smartphone, this one here. And there's one app that I use on a daily basis and it's actually PayPal. It really is. Yeah. Just to, send money,
nice.
Do some small transactions. So I think you guys did, overall and are still doing a pretty awesome job. It's super user friendly. And that's great. Now you moved on into more AI roles, as you mentioned, and you're currently focusing, I guess, on the intersection between AI and writing as one of the topics. And I think there is one of these skills that is really required to drive innovation. Sometimes maybe underrated is it's storytelling. Mm-hmm. So storytelling and writing is obviously connected to a very big degree. So let's say if someone's listening right now and they wanted to improve their own storytelling skills in business, in innovation, private life, whatever, where should they start? And what are some of the biggest mistakes to avoid when crafting a good story?
Yeah, it's a great question. And like you said, it's a highly, highly underrated skill. Back when I was at PayPal, we would bring in speakers all the time. It was one of my favorite parts of the job. So I would bring in authors and other people and just get to interview them in front of a crowd and record it and all this stuff. And one of the favorite things I got to do was to actually bring in storytellers, people who would do cartoons or all these different forms of storytelling as part of it. And it was important to build out this culture of innovation because, like you said, if you can't craft your story, if you can't get others to respond to that, no matter how great your idea is, no matter how wonderfully you can build a product, if you can't convince others to follow you along in this amazing journey that you're about to go on, then it's never going to work. it's never going to succeed, because we as humans, we respond to stories. We always have. You could give, the, I hate to quote Stalin here, but it's what a million deaths is a million deaths is a tragedy. What a single death is a I'm sorry, a million deaths is a statistic, single tragedy. Screw that quote up. You get the point though. But that's what we respond to. Numbers are important. Look, I started off in data science at PayPal and doing that. I mean, numbers are critical, but even in the world of numbers, you need to be able to tell and convey the story around it. Whether you're an entrepreneur looking to raise money, or whether you're building a product and looking for people to use it. It doesn't matter what field you're in, stories are the key. So for anybody to tell better stories, the first thing is it's hard. The best writers, it's not about writing, but it's about rewriting. It's again and again and again. The reason why most people, and this is true, ChatGPT, Claude, all the large language models today largely stink at generating long form stories. It's because literally they are generating these in a one-shot process, meaning word for word for word for word, it just spits it all out. Humans don't write that way. If you're writing a story, be it a business story, a fiction story, whatever it is, you will jump around. You will go back. You're like, wait a minute, this doesn't fit in. Oh, I got to this part. I should bring in something here. You write in a very nonlinear fashion. And it's all about doing it again and again. And frankly, it's about getting feedback. I mean, as part of my going back to school 4 years ago to get a degree in writing, the most valuable thing I've learned from is the peers in my class. When you write a story, you think it's awesome. You give it to 15 people and they give you very candid feedback of like, yeah, this doesn't really work, or, you should try this. Like, that's what makes it better. And I don't care who you are as a writer, Stephen King or John Grisham or whoever it is out there, you're getting feedback on your stories again and again. And that process, that collective process is what makes it better.
Yeah, and I mean, so when you construct a story, for example, around a new idea, what is the starting point? Is it the vision? Is it the audience? Is it the emotional core? How you make somebody feel? Can you maybe break down, the process step by step?
So the one thing I will say, one of my favorite managers at PayPal, he actually printed out these sheets for his entire team. And on the sheet was just a list of emotions. And he gave it to everybody who was on his team. And he said, whenever you're giving a presentation, I don't care how big or how small, I want you to circle the two things that you want your audience to feel at the end. Do you want them to feel informed? Do you want them to be excited? Do you want, whatever it might be? And this was, at first I was like, oh, come on, like really, I'm just here to tell them the product status meeting for how things have gone in the last week. But it really made me stop and think like, oh no, there's much more than this than just a status update. Like, do I want them to be excited? Do I want them to take this very seriously and be concerned, or whatever it might be? Like, when you have that emotion and think about what it is that you want to convey to your audience, that's key. So I think that's part one of your question, Chris. The other part that I think is so important in storytelling is really just structuring the story, and what is it in the story that is going to resonate with what your customer wants. Like, how do you tell that story in a way that is actually solving a problem for whomever that customer is? And I apologize because I know I'm jumping between fiction and business world a little bit here, so I apologize for that. But like, in the business world, structuring that story, it really has to be around like, okay, what is the need for my customer that I am solving through this? And what's the story, the journey they go around? I mean, if you're a startup and you're going to see a venture capitalist to try and raise money, the 3 minutes or 30 minutes, depending on the type of VC, the type of pitch that you have, it's all about story. This is what exists in the world today. This is the awful experience that these customers have, and this is the problems that they have, and this is how we solve that problem and fix it. And that is that is how every single VC pitch goes. It is just storytelling.
It is. What is, from your experience, the typical, set of feelings that you want, the listener, the audience, whatever the target group, to feel in the end? Is it like, that feeling that they're in control, feeling secure, feeling that they don't lose their job if it's a B2B context, or maybe for PayPal customers, something else? Yeah. So what's kind of the typical end state feelings that you've seen being used the most?
Yeah. Look, I would say it really varies, the types of feelings. You know, I think the simple fallbacks are always, well, you want them to be informed. You want them to feel confidence. You want them to feel whatever. To me, those are almost like the easy level one ones. But when you really start to get a little bit deeper, like, I mean, it depends on the scenario. If you're pitching venture capitalists about a business idea that you have, that's not what you want them to feel. You want them to feel, excited, and you want them to feel that, boy, you as a pitch person are competent. That's not really an emotion to feel, but I would say I would put that in there as well. Like, boy, this person knows their stuff. But they're also humble enough to be able to say, okay, I don't know everything. I will pivot. I will figure things out as I need to. But wow, I want to get on board for this amazing future that they see, and I'm inspired by that. So those are the types of things that I would do. Like, for anybody doing this, like, you can, just Google like list of emotions or something like this, and you could kind of print out your own one. Like, you don't have to use the same one that we used at PayPal or anything like that. Like, you can find these lists just about anywhere online and kind of choose which ones are right for you for whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah, but that's a great hack. And what do you think, from your experience, what makes a story stick? So when you leave the meeting, whatever, when you leave the boardroom, when you leave the VC stage, whatever it is, what makes it memorable? So you go out there, and the next day is like, I remember that story, or I've heard this, and then you carry that story with you for many weeks and months. Is it the way it's told, the emotional connection, sense of urgency? Is there something in there that makes stories stick more than others?
I think being personal and being specific are the two things. So when I look back at PayPal, the things that I actually remember most are like the stories, the events, the things, the outliers, and so forth. I remember one time we were working on a financial inclusion product. So this was something for the financially underserved. And in the United States, we had things called check cashing places. So you would go into a place, let's say you get paid every 2 weeks, and it's a week before your actual payday. You need money now because your car broke down or whatever the reason might be. And you go to a check cashing place and say, hey, I need money today for my car, but I'm going to get paid in 2 weeks. So basically, that's the whole process. So it's like a very short-term loan at a ridiculously high interest rate, as you can imagine. It's something, 200 to 400% interest rate is often what you could pay for something like that. And so one of the people who was working on this, and myself, and look, this is for something, the financially underserved. This was not for typical PayPal employees. So most employees building this product had never gone to these places, talked to people who had gone to these places and so forth, but never actually did it themselves. And one time, just the two of us, we were like, okay, let's go there. Like, there's nothing to say if you make a certain amount of money, you can't come here or anything like that. And frankly, I had all these perceived notions of how I would be treated, all this other kind of stuff. And so the two of us went and we cashed our checks. And we did that, and we got this super short-term loan for an amount of money. And then we reported that back to the team. And I tell you, like, us telling that story gave us more attention, credibility, whatever it is that you want to say, like, with the rest of the team as part of that. Because again, we had talked to hundreds and hundreds of customers. We had data, we had all this stuff. But like the thing that resonated with people was like, oh, Mike and Prashanthi, who's the other person I was with, like, yeah, they actually went and they did this thing. They experienced that firsthand. And that was super valuable. And again, the hour that it took to do that, and then conveying that to the team working on the project and using that as the story and the experience out there was something that no amount of just interviews and surveys would be able to convey.
Yeah. And would you say there are some nuances when you're telling a story to, different audiences? So, engineers, executives, customers, or potential customers, without actually diluting the core message? So do you have to adapt, or is it always the same core? What did you do?
No, you absolutely should change your message depending on who the audience is. And it starts probably with that sheet. Like, how do you want people to feel, and what is it that you want to get out of it? I always use the example of starting a company because I think that's something many, hopefully, of your listeners can relate to here. If you're starting something, you are going to give a completely different pitch to a potential customer than you would to a potential investor, than you would to a potential employee. You're always going to be pivoting, changing that story, altering what it is. You got to get into the mind of the customer of what they want. What incentivizes them? How is it that you can talk their language? It is, and this is even true if like you're interviewing at a company to get a job. If you're interviewing to get a job, you're trying to solve a problem that company has. And you need to be able to convince them through story, through example, through all of these things, that you are the uniquely qualified person that is going to be able to fix their problem. And it's through storytelling that you do that. So yeah, I think, Chris, depending on the audience, you are always changing the way that you're telling the story, the content that you're including, the content that you're excluding, because you just always need to be focused on, well, what is it that my audience wants? And what is it that, for me, the important thing that I want to convey or get in the end of this discussion?
What strikes me is that today we use so much AI, specifically Gen AI, for content creation.
Mm-hmm.
And you just mentioned it in the beginning, yeah. Of course, the way how these models that we currently have, the GPT-4o, the Claude, maybe not the GPT-o1, let's see, but the current ones, at least we use, they're super linear in how they craft a story and how they write. They don't think yet, about this and then do this iteratively. So, and I know LinkedIn is full of it, and probably many of the books published on Amazon already are too. Just content generated by some of those language generation tools. Are stories becoming worse because we just use AI these days? And have we maybe already seen the last great writer?
Oh, no way. No, I think I know what you're saying. And AI stories by themselves are, to quote my 13-year-old son, they are mid at best. So like they're painfully average, like all of these stories, because they're taking all of human knowledge and thought and understanding, and generally in this one-shot process that I described before, just matching the next word and so forth. Certain models like Claude Sonnet 3.5 does a decent job at it, but it's like you're reading a novel written by a ninth grader or something like that. Like, no, it's not really the craft that you would expect to see. They could do a pretty good job writing a press release. AI for almost 10 years now has been taking sports scores and converting those into articles about what happened in the game, and can do a pretty good job with that. When there is like a very standard formula, it can do well with that. The true creativity that you would have in a fiction story where, there's many possible outcomes and all of these different threads and so forth as part of that, it's difficult. It was extremely difficult for an AI to do that. I've actually been somewhat surprised at how slowly it has progressed in storytelling. Uh,
Hmm.
so since 2022, I have, as you mentioned, under the AI pen name of Alex Irons, been publishing these books on Amazon, and they ain't good. These are not good books that we're putting out there. They're 100% AI written, and I disclose it. I give all the money to charity. I always like to preface with that because I don't want to take money from actual authors. But like these stories, um, they're getting slightly better, but it's just marginally. There's so much more work that needs to be done. Where it does add the value, though, this is like even myself as a writer see this in brainstorming, in giving ideas, in being a thought partner, in all of these things. Whew, it's amazing what it can do. I was working on a book recently, and I used the new ChatGPT audio feature, which is very human-like. I was walking around a lake by me for 30 minutes, an hour, a couple different sessions I had. And I just said, hey, I want you to be my brainstorming partner on this. This is the idea. It's very science-based. So I'm asking you science questions. I want you to ask questions back to me. And we were going back and forth. I did this for an hour. And at the end, I was like, okay, can you take this and just summarize everything we discussed? Like, can you give me an outline of what I just described here? And it did that. It was like I effectively had an assistant in my ear that could type infinitely fast and could look up data almost just as fast as well and respond back and do that and give me an output at the end of that. And like those types of tools for authors are going to be hugely beneficial. I do think, just AI generating stories, even if it does generate to the level of humans, here's the reality. I think we are attracted to humans and what the things humans can do. And even when machines can do better than humans, we still like the story behind it, the human behind the machine that is doing this and so forth. We naturally gravitate to that. I always use this. There's a basketball player in America called Steph Curry. And anybody who follows basketball, around, hometown favorite here, love the guy. He's an amazing shooter. I can just do wondrous things with a basketball and get this big orange thing into this tiny hoop from far distances. We can build machines today that can do this better than Steph Curry. But nobody is going to spend $500 to go sit for 3 hours in a big stadium to watch a bunch of robots do that. We do that because it's humans. We do it because we know the story and all this and the drama and all these things, and that's what matters beyond all this. Can AI potentially do art better than a human? I think we're probably getting close to that, but it's not that really matters. It's the intent. It's all of these other things that go into that is really what makes it special. It really makes us gravitate towards that. And it's the story behind that. There's a famous quote of an art appraiser, for lack of a better term. And somebody asked them, can you tell me how much this painting is worth? And they said, yes, I can, as long as you tell me the story of who the artist is. And at first, the natural reaction was like, oh, that means art is fake and it doesn't really matter. And, you could just slop some paint up there. But, well, no, it actually is like what matters in all of these things is the story behind it. Whether you collected like football cards or baseball cards, these are all just pieces of cardboard with pictures on them. But we have deemed some of them to be worth thousands or even millions of dollars because of the story behind that. And this is getting to your point before. So we are a storytelling species. And even if AI can do things better than us, it doesn't mean that we are going to be out of a job, because we as humans have always moved towards the human side and all the foibles and all the shortcomings that come with that.
So what does Gen AI then actually do to human creativity? but because there's two groups, yeah, and maybe you remember, so back in the old days, when I don't know, when I was a kid and my parents were, driving, in the car together with me and other family members, drive to vacation, use a car, and then there was no navigation system. There was no GPS navigation whatsoever. So you had these huge paper-based maps on the lap, either of my mother or my father, it doesn't really matter. And then there was a very tedious process. You the evening before, you kind of get out a big, sheet of paper, get a pen, and you kind of write, the next exit. You want to make sure you're sequencing them in the correct order. You really are invested with your brain power in making sure just, the travel from city A to city B actually goes right. And then there was a point in time where you had these navigation systems. So my first one was a TomTom. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, I had one of those
navigation
too.
system. Yeah, exactly. So, use that, and kind of the entire driving experience changed in then. And I never had any, bigger change in driving experience than before and after navigation system. Because what you do now is you can really, you can talk, you can have a phone call, whatever. And all that fancy stuff you have in the cars today, it's nice, but you're still driving and the navigation system kind of tells you go left or right. And with Gen AI for storytelling and also for creativity, are we experiencing a next navigation TomTom moment just now for creativity, so that others and machines are basically telling us what to do? Or is it a renaissance of creativity in a completely upskilled and boosted fashion we see?
I think that's a great example, Chris. And what I would actually say, let's continue that example out. So, for you and me growing up, we had maps. I even just had pocket maps in the glove box and all this other stuff. Like, there are maps everywhere in the car when I first started to drive, and then GPS comes along and maps are gone. But the thing for us to remember is maps were an innovation too. So if we go back far enough to our ancestors before they had access to maps, and, say they wanted to go hunting somewhere to another village or whatever it was that our ancestors needed to do, they were relying on all these other things for navigation. And if those people from several thousand years ago would look at us, even just like us of the 1980s, let's say, or 90s, who just had maps, they would say oh my gosh, you don't know how to wayfind using trees and all this other stuff. And we'd be like, well, no, you don't need to do that because we have maps. And this is just getting to ultimately the evolution of finding where you want to go, the evolution of art, the evolution of all of these things. Let's just take painting for example now. I think there are very few painters today who will actually go and crush the berries and do all the things to actually create their own paints. Sure, they might do some mixing and some things like that. They're probably not skinning goats or anything like that, or whatever, sheep to pull out the canvas and to do that, to be able to do that. They just go to the store to do that. And these were all technological innovations that we had that kind of redefined what the craft was. So AI is going to be similar to that. And what is the future going to look like with AI? Now, maybe doing actual drawings might be a technique that is not as important in the future. And I know, I'm sure every artist that is listening or watching to this is cringing at that comment. But if the AIs can do these things well, maybe that isn't as important going forward, or is valued going forward. Just like crushing paints and so forth to be able to create the right colors, or crushing berries and all the things to create the right colors would be doing the same thing. So in the future, then what does matter? What does matter? What would a painter call themselves? And I think the world that we're moving towards is much more of one where we're all directors, if you will, to use a movie term, as the one who kind of can see everything and see exactly how they want things to be, and can use the machine, can use the tools, can use their own artistic skills, whatever it takes to do that, to convey exactly that image that they have in their head and somehow create that on a beautiful digital canvas that is going to resonate with people. That could be for a still piece of digital artwork. That could be for a movie. That could be for a song, whatever it might be. And I think in some ways, like, it will help people iterate faster. Like, again, just as all these other advancements have allowed artists to iterate much faster than they could have in the past. So it's changing. And change is scary because, like, there's a concept called the illusion of truth that I have. I'm sorry, no, it is the illusion of the past. It's the illusion of something. It will come to me as I'm describing it. I apologize. But what it is at a high level is, like, when we look back 10 years, we see ourselves as different people. When we look forward 10 years, we see ourselves as being the same as what we are today. And it doesn't matter if you ask a 20-year-old or a 60-year-old those same set of questions, like, oh yeah, I was into dumb music back then, my clothes look stupid, whatever. No, everyone assumes that what you're wearing and dressing like and listening to music and all that stuff in 2024 will be exactly the same as what it will be in 2034. And you know what? It's not. It never has been at any other point in time. And what is personally hard for us is to realize that our jobs will change. Our jobs are a series of tasks that we have. And that these are things that are going to have step changes. And it's the illusion of history, which is what I'm thinking of. I don't know why I said truth or whatever that was. The illusion of history is the psychological concept I was describing there.
That works. That works perfectly. Now, how does all of that translate to corporate innovation? You know, what do you think is the potential of AI or Gen AI, you know, in corporate innovation? Because for one, of course, there is a level of creativity involved, but at the other side, I mean, you know, too much creativity in a corporate context is also not what you want, probably. Yeah. So how's that coming all together? You know, you have the storytelling, you have the creativity, you have Gen AI, and then you have corporate innovation, which, you know, you've been in that role for a long time. So where do you think this is heading?
Yeah, I don't envy the people who are in corporate innovation type roles now, trying to introduce these products, because in some ways, big companies are very much at a disadvantage when it comes to this. You can start up a 2 or 3 person type startup with a bunch of AI, large language models, almost operating as semi-autonomous agents, building a product, iterating fast, doing, all of these things that, a larger company might do, but doing it in a much more nimble and quick way. For big companies, it's hard to change that. You have processes, you have all these other things, and to truly embrace these tools, it's not an easy thing to do. If we achieved artificial general intelligence, meaning, that we can create a robot that's smarter than all of humanity combined, and when I say robot, I just mean like a software robot. If we could create that like today, I don't think the world changes tomorrow. I think there is legacy, there's bureaucracy, there's all these things to have to deal with. So within a corporation, if I was trying to tackle this at PayPal today and say like, hey, we're going to have our lunch eaten by all these other fintech companies, we need to embrace these tools more. How do we do that? I think it has to just start with small experiments. You need just teams to just start working with these tools, seeing what is capable and sharing back. It wouldn't work to just throw all these tools at a 30,000 person company and just say, hey, you got ChatGPT now do something with it, and then expect to get something right away. I mean, you could do that and let them figure those things out themselves. I think also a lot of people would just be like, hey, this isn't working for me. It failed the first time. Wipe my hands clean. I'm done with it. I'm not using this thing anymore. And I think that would be the reaction of a lot, versus if you sort of slowly scaled it up. identify teams in different functions that really think could benefit from this, identify just leaders in areas who might seem more technology focused. It doesn't have to be in tech. It could be in legal. It could be in finance. It could be wherever within an organization. But you're going to find people who say like, oh, wow, yeah, we do all these things. These are pretty mundane processes. I would love to free my people up to do more of these other things that I think are more value added. And then getting back to where we started this whole conversation, Chris, after doing that for a month or two, holding their hands, introducing them to tools, seeing where the successes are, doubling down on those, seeing where the failures are, communicating those to other people, like, hey, we tried this, it didn't work, and that was okay. It's a process of storytelling that. And that's how you get the larger company to start to get online. You have a company all hands. So after 2 months of doing this, say, do you know what? We're going to take 5 minutes out of the hour we have at every all hands, and we're going to give an opportunity for a team who is working on this to get up here on stage and to tell their story to all the employees within the company. And believe me, that incentive alone is going to get the teams really excited, I think, to be like, oh, cool. Like if we do this, we could actually get in front of like all of our peers at the all hands and start to tell this and so forth. And like, that's the sort of process I would do. So again, Gen AI is not perfect. It hallucinates. It has all these other issues. It has bias problems, all problems in there. So it's not perfect at all. If people are trying to find fault with it, they will. They absolutely will. But if you just look for where the successes are and start to demonstrate those through story at the company, that is what's going to start to permeate through the rest of the organization.
So, Mike, this is very powerful, and I guess the combination between storytelling, AI, creativity, corporate innovation is something that'll keep many folks up at night for the next 1 to 3 years, whatever. And before this conversation ends, we do have a tradition on this podcast. Which is that my previous guest leaves a question for the next guest without knowing who my next guest is and what we're going to talk about. So the question that's been left for you is, if we would abandon GDP, gross domestic product, as a measure for human progress, which indicator would you propose instead?
Man, my macroeconomics teacher right now would probably be I hope he's not listening, because 15 years later after I've gone through school of my answer to this. Look, GDP is a useful but extremely imperfect measure of progress of society. And look, I think Ray Kurzweil in his latest book actually talked about this. He talked about Wikipedia and how much value Wikipedia has given to the world. Like I'm on it every single day, looking up something, diving deep, just going down rabbit holes. And Wikipedia is a net negative to global GDP. How is that? Because in the days like when Chris, you and I were young folk, we had things called encyclopedias. And these encyclopedias you would buy, and they would cost couple thousand dollars in the US for these things. Extremely expensive. Just about every household had one. They would get out of date, and all these other issues with this. And when those encyclopedias gone away and something goes for free, it's a drag on GDP. Nobody in their right mind would ever say the world of encyclopedias was better than the world of infinite Wikipedia information that we have today. So, I think that's just one example of the shortcomings of GDP. So what do I put in place? Whew. I'm going to have to go to some sort of happiness type index. Mm-hmm. I think, just asking people at random times how happy are they isn't the best measure of that. So, maybe it is a multi-pronged thing that would have some some measure of equality within a society, something of environmental health, just like how, air quality, water quality, things like that achieved across a society. And I don't know, probably a couple other metrics in there that I'm not thinking of, and then average of those. And you lay all those out, and we're going to see how woefully behind in some ways US is to my fine friends in Germany and some other places, I'm sure, when we do that. But I would look more towards that because, again, GDP is badly lacking. But I am no economist, but like if anybody wants to ping me on how I'm wrong or better feedback, I would love to hear the feedback and learn from you all on that. That was a great question.
No, that's a great answer. There is some, alternatives. Like I guess there is a Human Development Index, for example, that it includes a very similar thing that you were getting at. Like I guess it includes life expectancy, education, and some other stuff I can't remember. Yeah, but it's going in the exact same direction as you mentioned it.
Was this an economist that asked the question, Chris, or who? Can I ask who this was? What background they had?
I will not disclose the name, but it was somebody that with a professorship.
Okay, so professor, one of those academic types. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah. That's an interesting one. Well, anyways, that was a great response, Mike, and that's it for this episode. Really, thank you so much again for being my guest on this episode. It was a pleasure, and thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
It was an absolute pleasure. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me, Chris.
And to our listeners, if you have not subscribed yet this podcast, then please go ahead and do so. It's a small thing and will help us continue to make the show better and better. So our promise to you is that we will continue to do our best to deliver exceptional value at no cost. So if you're not already a subscriber, please go ahead and subscribe now. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye-bye.